I came to tell somebody today that there are moments in life that shake you to your very core, and moments where the ground beneath you feels like it's giving way when your strength runs out, when your plans collapse, when your own wisdom can't get you through. And it was in that moment, oh, you're not hearing me. It was in that moment when I thought I was at my lowest that God stepped in. He didn't just rescue me, he revealed something to me. He showed me not just that I needed help, but that I needed him, not an idea of him, not just a Sunday morning him. I needed the living, breathing, chain breaking, soul restoring God of heaven. And from that day forward, I've never been the same. There are moments in life when you think you've reached the absolute limit, and when everything around you feels like it's closing in. I remember the weight pressing down so heavily that I could hardly breathe. The plans I had built my life on began to collapse, one after the other, like dominoes falling in slow motion. People I thought would stand with me were nowhere to be found, and the few words of comfort I heard seemed hollow against the storm I was facing. Every day felt like an uphill climb with no summit in sight. I tried to keep moving, but the strength I once relied on was slipping away, and the hope that was unshackable started to crack. It's in those moments when you're staring at the shattered pieces of your own expectations that you begin to realize something is shifting. The breaking point is not just pain. It's a kind of unveiling. It strips away the illusions of control and exposes what's really holding you together. At first, it feels like loss, but there's a strange, quiet clarity that begins to take shape. The very things that once seemed so important suddenly lose their grip on you. Your perspective changes. Your heart starts searching not for another temporary fix, but for something steady, something that will not fail when everything else does. And it's in that searching, but right there in the H and emptiness, that the turning point begins to emerge. It's not loud, it's not sudden. It's like a small light appearing in a dark room. That light grows, and you find yourself realizing that the end of what you thought you needed is actually the beginning of what you truly need. What felt like the collapse of everything was, in reality, the clearing away of what could no longer hold you, that making room for something greater to take its place. The breaking point became the pivot, the shift, the place where my life's direction began to change. There comes a time in life when all the props you've been leaning on get knocked away. You try to fix it yourself. You try to push through. You try to muscle your way out. But every door you knock on stays shut. Every solution you think you have crumbles in your hands. That's where I was. Pushing, pulling, striving, but nothing was changing. I was drained, worn thin, and my confidence was hanging by a thread. The plans I thought were solid fell apart like sand slipping through my fingers. I had no more backup plans, no more clever ideas, no more strength to keep going on my own. I had reached the end of me, and it was in that exact space, when human strength had utterly failed, that divine strength made its entrance. It wasn't loud at first. It didn't come as a dramatic flash or a booming voice. It came as a still, steady assurance that whispered, I've got you. I didn't earn it. I didn't orchestrate it. It was God stepping into a place I could no longer manage. It was his hand lifting what I could no longer carry, his wisdom guiding me where my understanding was blind, and his power working in the cracks of my weakness. I began to see that the very failure of my own strength wasn't the end of my story. It was the doorway to something greater. If my strength had kept working, I might have never discovered his. If my plans had succeeded, I might have never leaned into his plan. It was the exhaustion of my own ability that opened my eyes to the fact that God was not a distant observer. He was an ever-present help, ready to infuse me with the courage and energy I did not possess. What I thought was my breaking point became the moment his strength carried me forward. I had always known about God. I could talk about him. I could quote scripture about him. I could sing songs about him. But there's a difference between knowing about someone and truly knowing them. For a long time, my relationship with God was comfortable, predictable even. I prayed when I needed something, thanked him when things went well, and went through other motions of faith because it was what I'd always done. But then came a season when life's weight pressed so heavily that all those surface level routines no longer gave me peace. The crisis I faced stripped away the idea of God I had carried in my mind and forced me to reach for something real, something deeper than habit or tradition. In that place of desperation, his presence became something I could feel. It wasn't just a theological truth I agreed with. It was a lifeline holding me together when everything else was unraveling. I could sense him in the quiet moments when fear threatened to take over. I could see his fingerprints in the small, unexpected provisions that arrived just in time. I began to realize he wasn't a distant observer, casually watching my struggle from heaven. He was sitting right there with me in the middle of it. He was the calm in the storm, the anchor when I felt I might drift away, the steady hand keeping me from falling apart. That shift changed everything. Faith was no longer just something I carried in my mind. It was something I experienced in my bones. His presence became the safe place I ran to, not just in emergencies, but in the everyday moments of life. I didn't just believe he was real, I knew he was near. And that nearness was not a temporary comfort to get me through one hard season. It became the foundation I could build my life on, the constant reminder that I am never truly alone. For most of my life, I saw dependency as weakness. I thought strength meant standing on my own, solving my own problems, and never letting anyone see me struggle. I prided myself on being the one people could rely on, the one who had it all together. But there came a point when my own ability could no longer carry me. Every solution I tried fell short. Every ounce of willpower was drained, and the facade of strength I had built began to crumble. I realized that no matter how capable I thought I was, there were battles I could not win alone. It was in that humbling place that God began to teach me a different kind of strength, the kind that doesn't come from independence, but from absolute dependence on him. I learned that leaning on God doesn't mean giving up. It means giving over. It means taking the weight I was never meant to carry and placing it into the hands of the one who can bear it without breaking. As I surrendered control, I discovered a strange and beautiful paradox. the less I relied on myself, the stronger I became. Not because I suddenly had more endurance, but because his power was flowing through my weakness. This dependency was not about becoming helpless. It was about becoming anchored. It was about shifting my confidence from my own limited abilities to his limitless resources. In moments where I felt empty, he filled me. In situations where I felt small, he reminded me of his greatness. That the very thing I once feared, relying completely on God, became the source of my courage, my resilience, and my peace. I began to see that true power isn't found in standing alone, it's found in standing with him, knowing that every step is guided, every burden is shared, and every battle is already in the hands of the Almighty. That moment changed everything for me. Before it happened, I thought I understood faith. I thought I had a solid grasp on my purpose, and I believed I knew the direction my life was headed. But when I encountered God in a way that was undeniable, personal, and transformative, it was like my entire perspective shifted. What I had once considered important began to lose its hold on me, and the things I had overlooked in my walk with him suddenly became priceless. My faith was no longer just a belief system. It became the lens through which I saw every part of my life. Purpose, too, took on a new meaning. Before, I measured it by accomplishments, by how much I could do or how far I could go. But in that encounter, I realized purpose isn't about climbing ladders or chasing personal goals. It's about aligning my steps with God's plan. Every decision, every opportunity, every obstacle now carried the question, is this where he's leading me? That kind of clarity gave my life a direction that felt both humbling and exhilarating. I understood that walking with him wasn't about fitting him into my plans. It was about letting him write the plans from the start. Even the way I lived out my faith changed. I no longer saw prayer as a duty, but as a lifeline. And I no longer saw the word as something to read out of obligation, but as a source of daily bread I couldn't live without. I began to approach challenges differently, knowing I wasn't fighting them alone. I approached people differently, seeing them through the compassion he had shown me. That single moment when God revealed just how much I needed him didn't just get me through a hard time. It rewrote the story of my faith, redefined my mission, and reshaped the way I walk with him every single day.